The Mr. Bravo Show is brought to you by viewers like you. No, Mom, I have the tickets. Yes, I promise you, Margaret will be there too. Oh, crap, I gotta go. They're about to start boarding. Yep. Okay, yes, yeah. Okay, love you too. Whew. Well, that vacation in Athens was quite the doozy. Why? Seeing the Parthenon, enjoying some delicious shawarma, hanging out at the Aegean Sea. Such a wonderful time to rest and relax. Well, enough of that. Time to get back to the grind of real life. You can't be away for too long after all. Although I have been standing around here for quite a while.
Ladies and gentlemen.
Oh, wait, the gate agent is about to say something. Let's listen.
Hello, and welcome to today's flight from Athens to none of your business, chump. We here at Olympic Airways are always happy to provide you with the best service possible, which is why today the flight has been delayed by about 4 hours. Yeah, I know. Too bad. One of our airplanes, Flight 411, had to return to the airport for an emergency landing. As soon as the airfield is clear, we are good to go. Thank you for choosing Olympic Airways, and we hope next time you will choose an airline that is still currently in operation.
An emergency landing, eh? On a massive jumbo jet, with implication for potential horrors beyond our imagination, methinks there may be some more to this emergency that people aren't realizing. Let's dig a little deeper, shall we? The year? 1978. It is the 9th of August, a wonderful summer day in the heart of the ancient Greek Empire, Athens. Well, specifically Ellinikon International Airport, since you're so curious. A whole bunch of tourists from the United States and some other countries are getting ready to board a long flight home to John F. Kennedy International Airport aboard a Boeing 747. The 747, also known as the Queen of the Skies, was the world's first jumbo jet that 1. Did not look like a medieval torture device, 2. Carried loads and loads of passengers, and 3. Did not immediately fall out of the sky. We'll get back to that last point later. A lot of major airlines saw the Boeing 747 and thought big plane equals big money. So it was a race for the airlines to get their hands on this new behemoth of a machine. Major airlines such as Pan American, Trans World Airways, Northwest Airlines, Flying Tiger, Air Namibia, and UTA are all bankrupt. That's not really important, but they all operated 747s for various periods of time. Another dead airline that operated 747s is, you guessed it, Olympic Airways.
Hey!
Since a lot of American tourists at that point in time had not yet seen the movie 300, they were the ideal demographic to show that, indeed, the people of Greece were not all made entirely out of marble statues. As a result, Athens would start to get more and more American tourists coming to visit year after year after year after year after year. And who better to fill that demand than the flag carrier of Greece, Olympic Airways. On this specific flight, a total of 418 people will be flying back to JFK. There were 400 passengers and 18 crew members, which included then 55-year-old Sifis Migadis and co-pilot Konstantinos Fikardos. I apologize for butchering the pronunciation, but bear with me. They were both seasoned veterans of the aviation industry, both having worked for over 30 years with Olympic Airways. Alright, cool, we get it, but let's get to the juicy bit. When does the action start? Right here. So, it's flying time. Are you wearing your seatbelt? Good. Now kick back and let me tell you about what went down on this flight. The plane left the gate around 2 p.m. and would soon be taxiing on the runway, eagerly waiting to fly up into the skies and head to New York. This plane was actually the only thing truly excited to be landing at JFK that day. I mean, maybe some other lunatics on the flight were, but at least they would not be landing at Newark. In fact, they would not be landing anywhere near the United States. As the pilots were taxiing to the runway, they noticed that 2 of the 4 engines on the plane were not performing as they should. The number 3 and number 4 engines were idling lower than normal, which raised some concerns by the pilots. These engines were the newer version of the previous 747 generation, designed by jet engine experts Pratt & Whitney. Sparing you the nerdy engineering details I am not qualified to talk about, the important thing you need to know is that this new engine was able to achieve a higher maximum thrust power due to water injection. I honestly don't know how it works, so let's just chalk it up to magic. As the 350,000 kilogram or 770,000 pound jumbo jet got into takeoff position, the pilots pushed the thrust levers forward and the plane started to roll down the runway. The plane takes off normally and flies normally for about 2 seconds. Engine number 3 had failed and the plane was struggling to continue to climb. A beeping noise was heard which was blinking over the water pump, which the crew turned off because the water had run out. Oh wait, that was the switch that was keeping the water flowing into the engines? And now there's even less thrust in the engines? Why, splendid! Noticing that the plane was struggling to gain altitude, the pilot, this guy, ordered the landing gear to immediately be retracted. This decision was against the aircraft flight manual since, well, the plane was not able to climb, and having the landing gear down would help with landing the plane, right? Well, it's not quite that easy. The pilot decided to retract the landing gear in order to give them the maximum amount of clearance in the sky, and to reduce the drag on the aircraft. This decision would prove to be extremely smart, since the plane was quite literally floating above the ground. As in, when they retracted the landing gear, the plane was just 11 meters or 35 feet above the ground. So now the plane is flying at a decent cruising speed of 160 miles an hour, or about 257 kilometers at best. Keep in mind, the minimum speed to keep a 747 airborne, according to Boeing, is 180 miles an hour, or 290 kilometers an hour. What the pilots were able to pull off was technically impossible. No matter how impossible it was, their first major obstacle lay ahead of them, a 200-foot or 61-meter tall hill, called Pawnee Hill. Again, apologies for the mispronunciation. The problem was, well, amongst the other issues, was that the plane was flying just about 180 feet or 55 meters above the ground, on a direct course to the hill. Since they were so low to the ground, they could not execute a turn without losing aircraft lift. So their only choice was to keep flying forward and pray that they would be able to get a little bit more lift. The pilots decided to lower the nose a tiny bit in order to gain a little bit more engine power, which helped them crest the hill, just barely, by flying 9 feet or 2.7 meters above the peak. The impossible had been completed. Well, now it's on to the next impossible task, maybe even more impossible. Their next major obstacle was in their way. They were on a direct path to fly into Mount Aigaleo, dead ahead. By this point, they had reached a speed of about 170 miles an hour, or 270 kilometers an hour, but they were continuing to struggle to gain altitude. The captain was prepared for death, and all he wanted to do was to make sure that the plane would not crash into the dense cityscape below. But alas, this would be the end of their doomed flight. And wait, is that a light headwind blowing towards the plane? And this would indeed be the saving grace for the flight, as it gave the plane just enough altitude to continue the climb and execute a bank turn, in order to avoid crashing into the mountain. They were barely able to turn the plane away to avoid crashing, but they made it over the mountains. By God, they made it over the mountains. And now there lay a big open sea in front of them. Oh wait, the plane is still struggling to fly. Yeah, let's not forget about that. So they've made it over the mountains. Great. But the airplane is still struggling to gain altitude, and the airspeed of the plane is looking less and less likely to maintain. If the pilots don't figure out something soon... Wait, what is this thing? Says the flight engineer. He noticed that the water injection system for the aircraft had been turned into the off position, and proceeded to flip it back on. Suddenly, the plane started to gain more power, and started flying faster. The plane had officially been awoken from its hampered state, and continued to fly normally. After spending some time dumping fuel over the ocean, the plane returned back to the airport of origin, landing without any injury. Alright, so the plane lands without any injuries. Now, it's back to business as before. Well, okay, fine. I guess we probably should process what the hell just happened. Let's start from the most bizarre point of this flight. This plane 100% undoubtedly should have crashed. Like, there's no room for interpretation here. But somehow, against all odds, the pilots were able to bend the laws of physics to their needs. As previously mentioned, the minimum speed to fly a Boeing 747 is 180 miles an hour, or 290 kilometers an hour, under ideal conditions. This flight was at times flying as slow as 158 miles an hour, or 254 kilometers an hour, which is about 30 miles an hour slower than was thought possible. Some theories state that due to the high temperatures on the ground that day, the hot air may have helped give the plane a little bit of extra lift. But that does not fully take into consideration that the plane was fully loaded and filled with a ton of fuel, barely being below the minimum takeoff weight. With those impossibilities in mind, they had to somehow be created, and as it turns out, Boeing found that the main culprit was the accidental shutoff of the water injection into the engines on takeoff. With that water injection shut off, the engines would not produce enough power, thus causing the plane to not get enough lift. As soon as the system was shut back on, the plane was able to climb normally. Had the pilots not figured that out, there would be no telling if they would have been able to maintain control of the plane. Spoiler alert, they probably would not have. Following the flight, Boeing would try to recreate it in simulators, but all of these flights ended in crashes. What the pilots were able to accomplish was deemed impossible by Boeing, but they all saw that it wasn't. It truly does seem that a little bit of magic was on the pilot's side. And as we know, the plane didn't crash, but let us take a moment to look at the flight path of the plane. If the plane had crashed anywhere along its route, it very likely would have killed hundreds more people on the ground, along with most, if not all of the passengers in the plane. Just within this line right here live about 40,000 people, and anywhere along this path could have spelled devastation for those in the plane's path. Okay, so we don't actually know how many people live within this line exactly in 1978, but just imagine big number. With all the impossibilities and improbabilities of this event tallied, the Greek government had come to a conclusion. The pilots were actual gods. Newspaper after newspaper printed the heroics of the pilots and commended them for their decisive thinking under intensive pressure.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are happy to welcome you back onto the ground following your turbulent flight. We will be providing a complimentary change of pants at the ticketing counter. We would like to remind you all to remember that modern airplanes are incredibly well engineered with about a gajillion fail-safes in place to prevent an accident like this from ever happening again. But no system is perfect. Another important thing to keep in mind is that you are more likely to die in a car accident on the way to your hotel than you would flying a plane over 5,000 times. Please remember to count your blessings, be grateful for the engineering marvels of modern aviation, thank your pilots for touring you around the globe, and may you never have to experience the worst airline accident that never happened. Safe travels.